Ryan, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Joseph.
Yeah, I've been intrigued by the local newsletter model for a while, so I'm excited to hear your story.
What first got you interested in it?
I've followed Nathan Barry for a little bit, so I know that he's got the Idaho thing, or the Boise thing rather, and it just seems like a unique spin on the newsletter because most of the people that I follow send out like aggregations of links that they've read and summaries or their own writing or that type of thing. But obviously the advice for building a newsletter is to have a niche, right? And what's more niche than covering one city? So I think it's like a super practical way to start a newsletter that's going to grow relatively quickly.
Yeah, you can't really let yourself get much scope creep because you can't. I mean, you if you take it, just wouldn't make any sense to take on another city at the same time. So
Right.
you really force yourself into the niche.
So you run a newsletter in the truest sense of the word, right? It's news. Can you tell me about the Naptown Scoop?
Yeah, so like you said, it's news. It's also events. So it's really just kind of what's going on in the city of Annapolis. And the way I like to describe it to people who haven't heard of it or they ask, living in Annapolis, they ask what it is. I'm like, we just kind of tell you how to live there. We tell you the news that you need to know, like excuse me, like the crimes that are happening, if they're going to be relevant to your life, or the big news in politics. And then also we tell you the events that are happening so you know how to have fun. And that's probably the most important part. People really like someone telling them what they can do. We do not like to go. Humans are lazy. We do not like to go find things on our own, and it is actually a lot of work to find out all these events that are happening because the people that are throwing them very often do not have large social media followings or just large distribution to tell people about their events. So I have to kind of get in the weeds and find all these things, but people super appreciate it when I do. So that's probably the most important part is the events.
Yeah, I could totally see that. So I just moved to Greensboro, North Carolina about 2 months ago, and I like to run. I like to go out and see live music. I like to check out the breweries, but I don't like using Instagram, and that's where all of these places post what's happening. So I always have my wife like go on and figure out what's going on, and it would be so cool if I just could have this newsletter like you do that comes to my inbox 3 times a week and tells me where the live music is or where the events are. So yeah, I would love that. When did you start the newsletter?
August 17th, 2020 was the first send.
And what made August 17th the right time? Not the specific date, obviously, but that point in your life.
I wanted to hire people to do this, but it's really hard to hire people to do something when you don't really have much money to pay them. So I got kind of close with a couple people, and then they got really close with two of those people, and then they dropped out like super last minute. So after the second person dropped out, which was the fourth person I tried to hire, I was just fed up, and I was like, I'm doing this. So I started doing it. I think that was August 12th that happened. And I just that night threw up the website, got a Facebook ad account approved, and started ads. So I didn't have to go through the, like send your first email to zero people thing. Well, I don't think anyone should ever do that. I think you should always be sending it to a couple people, whether it's friends or parents or kids or something. You should have people to send it to. But I actually sent the first one to 64 people because I was already running ads for it. But yeah, what made it the right time? Uh, it was just when I realized that I thought I could do it. It was not no real right time.
So were you working full time elsewhere when you started this?
No, I had quit my job in January of 2020 to start something. I didn't know what it was going to be, and I'd been working on lots of things for the last 7 months as of August 2020, and was kind of just looking for the early traction that was a good sign to keep going. And this was the first thing that I started doing that really took off. And I kind of thought it would. This was like the thing I felt best about. I hadn't really approached anything else with the same level of confidence or intensity that I took into this. And maybe that's why it started to do well. I don't know. But I do think it is the best thing that I had done over the last couple months. And so now I've still don't have a full-time job, and still haven't run out of money. So fingers crossed that continues, and I'm still working on it.
What were some of the other things you tried during that 7-month time?
A lot of newsletters, like I'm big into newsletters, or I got big into newsletters in that time. So I had a couple different newsletters. I tried to build a rewards points, credit card rewards points booking system where you could like tell me where you wanted to go and I would find you the flights to use. Uh, I used to be pretty good at that, but that just never took off. And good thing, because that would have been totally dead like 3 months later if it had.
So you landed on local newsletters. So I'm interested what it is about local news that you think is good, like the model in particular. What do you like about the local news model?
I like that it's easy, and nothing's ever easy, but it's easier to get super fans than it is with really almost anything else. It would be like building something around a sports team. There's already people who are diehards for that sports team, and anything you make about it, they'll probably love, or at least they'll give it a shot. There are people who absolutely love the city of Annapolis, and anything about Annapolis, they'll consume. So they'll give you a shot, and if you're good, they will really, really love you. And if you're doing something else, like let's say I was building a newsletter about, and this is just an example of what I actually did, like adventure sports, like like hiking, rock climbing, that sort of thing. There's people that really love that, but not in the same way that someone just really loves a city. Like you could love hiking, but you don't really want to go like read books about hiking. You just want to go hiking. And I guess maybe if I had a location specific newsletter that told people where they should go hiking or something like that, maybe it would catch on better. But I just feel like it's easier to get super fans with a local newsletter because there are people who just adore the city. And if you're telling them what's going on in the city, they're like, yeah, I'll read that no matter what.
What about the local news model is broken, like the traditional news that you're trying to fix with your newsletter?
First of all, I think there's a problem with journalism in general. The idea of journalism, because of the way it's delivered, is not to really inform you. It is to catch your attention. It used to be to inform you when you had to sign up for the newspaper or get it delivered to you and you had to pay 25 cents or whatever it was per newspaper, probably more later. I'm thinking like old days when there was no internet. Like they had to continuously deliver good content. Otherwise, you just cancel your subscription. Don't get the newspaper anymore. But with online news, it's just so accessible and there's so much of it that they have to grab your attention. And so the incentive is not to tell people what's going on, it's to tell whatever will get their attention. So that influences the stories they write, it influences the way they write the stories. And with the email newsletter, it kind of goes back to that delivery newspaper model where it's like, no, I'm not incentivized to grab your attention. I'm incentivized to provide value every single day. So I like that. I like how the incentives are set up a little bit, what I would say is better. As to why it hasn't worked for anyone else, I can't really put a finger on it. Like I haven't looked inside of any of these giant news organizations that have tried to make it profitable and can't. I do think though that they just haven't built super loyal fans, and I think they lose fans a lot. And I think that's because they focus on the wrong things. I think we just talked about the incentives of attention versus value, and I also think that there's a huge open space in being personal with news. Like you're never going to go and talk to, I have never seen anybody stop one of the reporters in our town and tell them like, oh my gosh, I love your work so much. I love what you're doing. And even if they did, it would probably just be like a quick, oh, thanks. And then the reporter's got to get back to what they're doing. And that's not anything on the reporter. That's from the top down at the company where it's like, no, your job is this. And if someone stops and talks to you, like it's a quick conversation, you say thanks. And, not even a conversation, you just say thanks and bye. With me, if somebody stops me and tells me they love what they're doing or love what I'm doing, I'll stop and talk to them for 15 minutes or 20 minutes as long as they have. And then I'll greet them by name the next time I see them. And I just think there's a huge open space in that. And I think that is one of the reasons that you you couldn't come into the town where I am and beat me. You could get anybody that I haven't gotten yet. Anybody that doesn't read me would go find yours and probably join yours. But anybody who's, I think very few people would leave my publication to go read another one that was doing the exact same thing. And that's because of the relationships that it's built on.
Yeah, making it personal is really strong, and it seems like it's something that a news organization can't even do because if you're publishing a newspaper and it's made up of articles written by 15 or 20 different people, you as the consumer might read an article written by Ryan on Monday, right? But you might not see another article written by Ryan until next Thursday. So how do you even develop that relationship at all? Whereas you're the only person writing the Naptown scoop, right? So every single time that somebody reads the Naptown scoop, they're connecting with you, which is super powerful.
There's that, but there's also the fact that if you see Ryan's article in the newspaper, how do you get in touch with Ryan? You can't. Maybe if it's a forward-thinking newspaper, his Twitter handle is at the bottom of it. His email address isn't there though. But how do you get in touch with Ryan, who writes your email newsletter? You just respond to the newsletter, and that's why I think it's. I don't know if I'd say. I think I would say this pretty confidently because I think I'd be using another one if I couldn't. I think it's the best delivery method for content. It's straight to you. You don't. They don't. Your readers don't have to go find it. It's a direct one-on-one connection, and that is invaluable. Like I said, I get 3.24 responses to every newsletter I send on average. Some days I get 0, some days I get 12. It's like you can't beat that. You can't replicate that with a newspaper. You can't replicate that with just a website. That one-on-one connection is invaluable.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think one of the other things that you do really well is the way you write, your voice, your tone. It's totally different from a newspaper or really any news organization aside from maybe Morning Brew. But I've never been to Annapolis. I don't really care much about Annapolis, but I find myself reading your newsletter about Annapolis, and I think it's due to the way that you write. So, could you speak to that style, how you found that, and how you settled on it?
Well, it's funny you mentioned Morning Brew because I believe the correct term is to say you're inspired, but I like to steal everything they do because I think that they do a really, really good job. I think their product is incredible. But the voice, I would go back to that personal thing. I think people want their news told to them in a personal manner. I think the AP style guide is, I just don't think people want that anymore. I don't think they want to hear their news in that way. Like if you read it, it just sounds clunky. Like to give an example, like probably when people are quoted is my least favorite thing. That I think it's the AP style guide. I don't even honestly, I've never even looked at it. I don't know what it is, but I'm imagining that that's what it is. I don't haven't looked at it because I don't care about it. But when somebody is quoted, it'll be like, you know, let's just use COVID as an example. And I think it's a really misleading way to say something. So it'll be like, a Delta variant is spreading fast enough that we're all going to die next week, says some crackpot who doesn't know anything about medicine. And I think that's such a weird way to write. Nobody would ever tell you that like if someone was going to tell you about some crackpot that said that, they'd never say it this way. They would say, did you hear about that wild person who said this? But when you write it the other way, it almost makes it sound like you're stating a fact. And if somebody just quits reading the sentence halfway through, now they think we're all going to die next week. And so I just think it's kind of a confusing way to tell things. And I just try and make it sound like I'm actually speaking the news to them. And so one of my secrets in proofreading is I read it out loud every time. And I do that because it's easier to catch typos because it forces you to go slower. But also, you can really see you're really good at reading in your head, but you're less good at reading out loud. But when you read out loud and you stumble over something, that's a really good indicator that you're going to stumble over it in your head too. Um, you might not, you might get through it, but if it's clunky to read out loud, it's probably going to be clunky to read in your head too. So I just try and make sure it's super easy to read, super conversational, because I do want to kind of not entice, but I want to encourage conversation. I want people to know there's a real human writing on the other side of this and that they can answer anytime.
What is your relationship like with local publications in Annapolis?
Well, the newspaper really doesn't like me. Um, they just kind of pretend I don't exist. I'll be out at the same events as their people, and I'll say hi, and I'll get out of their photographer's way if I get it. If we're standing here and I'm in front of him and I get my shot, I'll get out of his way. He will not do the same for me. I say, hey, what's going on? And he doesn't answer. I mean, like, they do not like me at all, which I just think is silly. And I think it's a little bit childish, honestly. There's another publication that is sort of like a blog that it does a similar thing to what I do. They just don't do it with a newsletter. And he's really nice. I reached out to him. I reached out to everybody when I first started and like kind of introduced myself and told him what I wanted to do and that I wasn't trying to be a competitor. And that's the newspaper was really upset with that one too. So we just got off on the wrong foot. But this other guy, he was like, yeah, I can't wait to see how we can work together. And we haven't been able to yet, but I think we were going to on this a recent project that just didn't end up working out. But yeah, there's not much in the way of other news. So like there's not a lot to, it's like one guy likes me, the other group really doesn't like me. There's a couple other like bloggers or social media people that do similar things. There's one lady that shares mostly just live music. And I think she runs social media for a couple businesses around town. She absolutely hates me. She blocked me on on all her accounts. She's got two. And I'm like, I didn't even figure this out for months after it happened. I think she blocked me because she thought I was like stealing her content. And I'm like, I didn't even know you blocked me because I never checked any of your things. And so I like seeing her around at events and also saying hi to her. It just, I kind of like awkward situations, and you'd be surprised. Like I think that these older people, these adults that are in some cases twice my age, are acting a little bit like children.
What was the response that you received from the newspaper when you sent that initial email?
My tagline now is local news with personality, but in the beginning, it was we tell you the news like a friend, not a faceless news corporation. And they took offense to that because they thought that I was calling them out specifically. And honestly, I didn't even think of them when I wrote it. I just thought of like massive newspapers and online stuff that like you're not a person, you don't matter to them. You're just another customer. And that's who I really wrote it for. I never like specifically thought of our newspaper, but it was just a bad week. I mean, that week they're they're fully owned by a hedge fund. They were 33% owned by the hedge fund at that time. And they had just been pressured to close their office. So they closed their newsroom and they all had to work remotely. And to them, that was really important. They wanted to have their newsroom. Also, in Annapolis, the newsroom is important just because of what it represented to them. Like, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the shooting in 2018, but a guy blasted into the newsroom, killed 5 people, and there were a couple survivors in there. But so the people that lived through that, they got their new newsroom. It had bulletproof windows, and they felt very safe there. And then that got taken away. And that was the week that I started that it got closed. So it was a bad timing thing. But all that long setup to say, I sent them the email, said, here's what I'm doing. Here's my website. I'm not your competition. I want to work with you. And the only response I get is a quotation that says, like a friend, not a faceless news corporation. So
Oh,
again, I'm like, these older people are acting like children. And so I just responded and I was like, oh, I'm sorry. Like, I guess that offended you, whatever. Ended up taking it down. Um, I forget what I put up in place of it, but it was like I mean, even like a friend, not a faceless news corporation is a crappy tagline. Uh, Not in the sense of it's like a shot at them. It's just a crappy tagline. It doesn't flow. It doesn't really tell you what's going on. It does, but local news with personality is so much better for branding purposes. So it wasn't the end of the world that I took it down. But yeah, that was that was bad. That was our first interaction. I believe our second one was when I used one of their photographer's pictures. He tweeted out a picture of this really cool event we had, and I always have a featured social media picture in the newsletter. I put that, I put his picture in as the featured image, and the vice president of their parent company emailed me and said I had to take it down because I violated copyright infringement. And I was like, oh, well, sorry, I can't, I'll take it off my website in the archives, but I can't unsend an email to 3,000 people or however many got it at that point, probably not 3,000. Um, and then he was like, yeah, in the future, you have to license our photos. And I was like, well, how much is that? And I forget what he said. I could go look up the email, but I think they're like, I think they might be $300 a time. And I'm like, I'm not ever doing that.
Yeah.
Sorry. That's just not worth it. Like, they're not that good. Um, so that was, I think those are the only two
So they're
interactions we've
obviously
actually ever had.
they're reading the Naptown scoop if you got a reply saying you can't use our picture.
Yeah, I mean, well, I don't know if somebody's reading it. Somebody is definitely reading it. Um, I don't think that guy reads it himself, but I imagine somebody read it. And I don't know if maybe they do this to everybody, or if it was like, oh, like maybe here's a chance we have to like rough this guy up. Like, let's get him.
Mm,
Like, people share those photos all the time. I don't think they're reaching out to them and saying you got to take that down. I think
right.
that was, oh, let's rough this guy up with this. And I'm like, I don't care. First of all, I'm not going to take the photo down because I can't, and I'm not going to pay you for it later. And I'm never going to pay you for them in the future. I'm just not going to use them. Like, I don't need your photos. I actually was trying to help you out, and I gave your guy like a super nice shout out because he took a pretty good picture.
Mm,
And yeah, so like the kindness was not repaid there. I just think that they could get a lot out of me if they actually were willing to work with me, but I don't think they are. The only other communication we've ever had has been when people quit. Um, I reach out to them and just wish them luck on the next thing. The editor just quit, I think last week or 2 weeks ago, and he was very nice in his response. But I've reached out to other people because they've quit to go leave and do the same thing. Like, we've had reporters from our paper leave and go. Now they write Axios local newsletters, and so I'm like, oh yeah, like maybe what I'm doing isn't such a dumb idea after all, huh? They're interesting. I would expect a little bit more maturity from adults.
yeah. So, to what extent do you use the local news publications to write your content?
I'm not doing any journalism. I'm strictly reporting. So I'm reading what our newspaper puts out, filtering through what's important and what's not, and just sharing it with my newsletter. I recently started making a note if it's from, not if it's from the local newspaper, but if it requires a subscription to read, which our local newspaper does. Um, I've recently started doing that, but yeah, I'm not actually going out and doing any kind of journalism. I am strictly reporting on what's happening, using and really amplifying the journalism of other people.
So now I kind of understand why you're building this thing, but I'm interested in how to build a local newsletter. And I'm going to preface this question with one of your tweets that I saw that said something to the effect of, "I'm excited to teach everyone how to build a local newsletter so I can buy those newsletters." So, how would you how would you advise someone who came to you wanting to build a newsletter in their city? Like, what are the first 5 steps you'd tell them to take?
Well, the first one is, and this is kind of cheating, so I can have more steps, but it's just to get started. Build up, get a website, go up and, or honestly, you don't even really need a website. Just put up like an email newsletter sign up form. But obviously, first you have to start sending it to people. So you got to get people to sign up, and then the next thing would be just start paying attention to what's happening. Read the newspaper, find if there's bloggers or anybody covering local news in your town, find them and start reading them so you can put that in the newsletter and share out their work. And don't steal it, like always link to it and make sure that they're getting, if somebody wants, you're going to summarize 2 or 3 sentences of their story. It's not plagiarism. That's totally kosher under the Free Use Act or whatever law it is. I don't remember, but like I think you can like literally copy word for word some percent of the story, but you're not going to do that because you're probably not going to like the way it's written. You're just going to summarize it, and then you're going to link to the original source. So just start paying attention to that, and then just Yeah, my biggest advice is just to start, like just start going. Ask people to sign up if you have any money, right? Or put some Facebook ads out there and get people to start reading. Um, and then I guess everything else would just kind of be little tips like you have to respond to every person. I mean, if you don't, I think you're an idiot. Especially if you only have 10 people reading and one of them responds. You just got to talk to 10% of your audience. That's awesome. And I think people ignore their audience way too often. So it would be to respond to every question that you get or every response, even if it's just, hey, I really like what you're doing. It's a quick thank you. Or it's a, hey, I hate what you're doing. It's a quick, oh, thanks for taking the time to let me know. Like, I'm sorry you feel that way. Everything gets a response, unless it's like, you don't have to respond to spam emails. But if it's a real person emailing you and you can tell they deserve a response. So I guess that's only 3 steps. We don't even need all 5.
Okay, that's a good place to start. I've heard you describe the Naptown Scoop as everything you need to know about the city. How do you determine the threshold of need to know?
If it's going to impact your life on a near daily basis, I think you need to know about it. And does it's up for interpretation. It's a fairly recent example that I would use, but in a couple years ago, there was a gang murder in Annapolis, and I think the guys just got sentenced. I think that was it. And so I put in the newsletter that they got sentenced, but I did not feel the need to explain what gang it was, because the way the newspaper wrote it very clearly looked like, I don't know if this was actually their intention. I really don't want to judge their intentions, but the way it was written looked like it was fear mongering a little bit. Like, you need to be worried that you're going to walk down the street and this gang's going to shoot you. And that's just not true. I think there's less than 8,000 members of this gang in the whole country. 5 of them in Annapolis got arrested for this murder. I think that was probably more than half of them in Annapolis. Like, this gang is not a huge issue. And the person that they killed, actually everybody that they killed, was a rival gang member. So unless you know you need to worry about these people, you probably don't need to worry about these people. So things like that. I just, I didn't feel that I said it was a gang related thing, but I don't feel the need to tell you the name of the gang. And if you click on the story, obviously the newspaper will, but in my newsletter, I don't think people needed to know that, because there's realistically almost no reason to be afraid. If you're not a rival gang trying to hurt these guys, they're probably not going to mess with you. So something like that is a decision that I've made. Maybe this is, I don't know, not short-sighted, but maybe this is incorrect thinking, but like, if so this week, a former city council member, I think county council member it was, passed away. I don't exactly feel the need to report that. The guy was a council member a long time ago. I didn't include that. But this week, also a Board of Education member, like an active board member, did pass away. And that I did feel the need to report, because it felt like, oh, you're gonna have a new board member. Like, even if you don't care that you're gonna have a new board member, like, if you just saw that headline, you might wonder, how are we gonna get a new board member? So explaining that you're gonna get a new one, how they're gonna get appointed, it's not gonna be an election, the council's gonna appoint them, things like that, I feel like are important to know. But yeah, it's a fine line. It's kind of just, do you need to know this is this going to change anything about your daily life, or is this information that sometimes you can just tell people, like, people are going to want to know this, and you put it in.
Yeah, I like that threshold. So it's like it's a little bit subjective, right? But um, you definitely lean towards, is this going to affect my life? And that's what I think is the issue with most news, primarily national and um, international news. You can watch Fox News or CNN or CNBC until you're blue in the face, right? But how often is that making a difference in your day-to-day existence? Almost 0% of the time. So I like what you're doing with local
Well,
news.
that's the same thing I was talking about. They're just looking for attention on TV. They need your eyes back on the TV. uh, the 24-hour news cycle is like one of my least favorite things we've ever invented as humans. I don't even think news should be on TV. I watch TV news once a year, and that's or I guess not even once a year. I'm an idiot. Every 4 years, I watch the presidential election coverage just because I think that probably is the best, or if not the best, just like the most fun way to know which states are winning. Um, yeah, I kind of hate TV news.
I totally agree with you. I think it's entertainment disguised as being informed, and so many people don't realize that. They're like, "Oh, I'm watching the news, uninformed citizen." It's like, dude, you could watch Keeping Up with the Kardashians and you'd be as informed as watching CNN or what, insert whatever network you want to watch. So, um,
And so I would say that mine is, it's news and entertainment, but there's no disguising it. Like it's meant to be fun, but it's also probably going to inform you about what's going on.
yeah, it gives you something you can take action on because it's happening within 5 miles of where you live, right?
Yeah, well, I guess it could be theoretically within 20 because I do a 10-mile radius from a certain point in Annapolis. So if you lived all the way on the other side and there was something on the other side, it could be pretty far. But yeah, it's still it's likely happening very close to you. And also, I think that I don't know why that people don't do this, but like when if there's like a city council meeting, you always have the chance to go and speak at the city council meeting, and nobody talks about that. Like our newspaper never talks about that. They never talk about that on TV. You get to go. You can go talk at those things. And before July 7th, we reopened, or yeah, I think 7th we reopened our offices in the city. But before it was just on Zoom. But like now you can really go in that room and you can go speak your mind. And I tell people how to do that. And I just never see anyone in the newspaper or on TV ever talk about. And like I said, I don't watch TV news very often, so I don't really know. Maybe they are, but I don't think they're ever talking about how the citizens can actually get involved in what they're doing. And maybe they're just going to ignore you, but the government will actually hear you. I don't know if they'll listen to you, but you can go in and talk to them. And I like to tell people how to do that. So it really is, it's not just news that's going to keep you informed, it's actually actionable.
And that's how it should be. I mean, that's part of a functioning democracy is people participating in those things. And I don't do that, so like who am I to criticize? But if nobody does that, then the country doesn't continue to function the way that it's supposed to.
I mean, I've never done it either. I've never gone and spoken at a city council meeting. I don't really, I don't want to say I don't care too much. I guess I don't really believe that, I don't believe that the government is capable of solving a lot of problems. Also, don't like believe that it's their purpose to solve problems in my life. So I'm not going to go like fight for myself on my own behalf for them to like improve my life. Cause I think waiting for the government to improve your life is like probably one of the dumbest things you can do. Um, but I do think it is important that people know that that's an option.
For sure. So you had a tweet about an issue you sent out that you thought was below average, but then you got a couple responses from readers saying how much they loved it. And I've had this exact same experience with my newsletter. What was your takeaway from this?
Most importantly, that you never have it all figured out. Because what's the date on that tweet? That's probably fairly recent, right?
Yeah, I don't have the exact date, but it was within the last month or so, I think.
Yeah. So like I've been doing this for 10 months now. You never have it all figured out. I like sometimes I think I know what's going to work, and I have a pretty good idea of what's going to work well. But sometimes, yeah, I'll send something out and I'm like, this is not gonna, people aren't gonna like this. And then it ends up being something super popular. I don't know I can't think of the exact issue that was, or why I thought it wouldn't be popular. But yeah, that is my takeaway. You never know exactly what's going to be popular. So just keep putting stuff out. Even if you don't think it will be. I've done this with Instagram too. Like I have an Instagram for the newsletter, and I've put up posts that I think, yeah, I'm worried to put this out. I might go delete this later because it won't get any likes or comments. And then it's my third most popular thing ever. So yeah, it's just not like a big takeaway there. I'd just say the takeaway is just keep going. And that's, I guess if I want to go back to when you said I got 5 things to give people, I give my advice, just start, always answer. And I think there was one more in there. but it kind of would go along with just start. Will be just don't quit. Uh, I might write at the top of my to-do list every single day, don't quit every day. And I think if you just don't do that every day, you're going to get where you want to go eventually. So yeah, the lesson there is not a huge thing. It's just keep producing, don't quit.
I
You
think
never
it
know what's
is.
going to work.
That's true. I think it is huge though, because consistency is important in so many areas of life, whether it's fitness or nutrition or your career or writing a newsletter. Like half of it, maybe even more than half, is just showing up. And if you just keep doing those things, you improve. Like you go to the gym and don't really feel like working out and you have a shitty workout, right? You still had a workout. You're still getting better, and it's better than the alternative of not showing up. So I think that's a really big takeaway for anyone who's trying to improve anywhere. Just keep doing it. Just don't quit every day, like you said.
My dad's old, I think it was his high school football coach, used to tell him, "You're never staying the same. You're either getting better, or you're getting worse." And yeah, there's a gazillion ways you can go say it, but like you said, just show up, consistency. And the thing is, you have to kind of make it not optional for yourself. Like you have to make. I wouldn't say consistency is important. I wouldn't say not quitting is important. I would say it's uh, consistency is not an option. It is a requirement. And if you're going to go do something like this, it helps to have investment in it, whether that's just a bunch of time or financially, something that there are going to be days when you don't want to do this. I've written 134 of these emails. There have been a couple days recently where I'm like really not wanting to finish writing the email. I have put it off all day. It's now like 1 a.m. and I really want to go to bed and not write. But I know that there are 6,000 people that are expecting to wake up and get it, and not all of them are going to read it. But I know that there's some people that would be like, "Hey, what's going on if this didn't show up?" And it's just not an option. Like people sometimes ask me, like, "How do you get the motivation to send an email every day?" And I'm like, I just won't let myself not. Like it's just not an option. Like I don't even consider that. If I have to stay up until 5:45 to send the email at 6, I'm going to.
It's a great way to approach it. So here's kind of a two-part question. The first is, what does the breakdown of your time look like between, and if there are more aspects, you can go ahead and add to this, but between like writing the email and then going out and doing brand building type of stuff? And then the second part to the question is what you're doing something that somebody could do as a side hustle, or does it really need to be your full-time thing?
I'll probably jump into the second one first. I think you could absolutely do it as a side hustle. I think that it would be hard to do. I don't want to even say as well, but it would be hard to do as in depth. Because I get to spend all my time on this. You could write the same kind of quality emails, I think. I just don't think you'd be able to go out and build the same brand because I can go out to the press conference at 10 a.m. on a Monday. I can go out and be at this, I can go have a meeting with someone at 2 o'clock or whatever. I can meet with my retired readers whenever they want to because they're retired and this is my job and I don't have to work another one. So I don't think you'd be able to I don't want to say you wouldn't be able to do it as well. I just think you wouldn't be able to do it as in detail. And obviously, you probably would spend less time on it unless you just didn't sleep or something. Um, but yeah, I totally think you could do it as a side hustle. I think the easiest way if somebody was like, I don't want to put in that much work. Everybody tells me their favorite part is the live music, and you could do that once a week. You could send an email with all the live music for the week, and people would love it. And then it would be pretty easy to you'd be like, hey, now we're actually going to talk about events and live music, and you could just start it slowly. But if anyone was like, I don't really want to jump in with that much work, but I kind of want to do this, I'd be like, just do live music. Find all the calendars, follow the restaurants, like make an Instagram and Facebook is hard, but like hang on, there's a tip for that too. Like make an Instagram and only follow the restaurants and the places that are hosting live music and just scroll through it. Make sure you see every post. Hopefully you follow only a couple. If they don't post about their live music, unfollow them. Make it super easy. go check the events page of the restaurants on Facebook. They'll put live music up there. That would be the easiest way to start. So you could definitely do it as a side hustle. It would just be a little bit pared down. And then back to the first question with the time breakdown, I spent a lot of time writing and doing our Instagram as well. And I kind of lump those into the same category because I lump them into one job description, which would be editor. Um, I want to hire someone to do that or two people to do that and share the responsibility. But that is what I mean, that is the producing of the product. That is my least favorite part, actually. I like that brand building. I like being able to go out and meet with readers. I like supporting. I now have a salesperson doing advertising sales. I like supporting her. I like making new connections with people that I can connect her with. I like making our Facebook ads, figuring out how to grow. I like looking at all that stuff more than I like the actual producing of the product. That just kind of has to be done because somebody's got to do it. And I imagine that once somebody else is doing it, those connections, like they'll be going out and having meetings with readers. I probably won't be as much anymore. But if I had to put a breakdown on it, I would probably say that the newsletter takes probably 6 hours on average to get each one done. So that gets shared over 2 days because I only send 3 times a week. And then I spend about 15 hours a week on Instagram as well because I do scroll through and make sure I see every post so I can know what I need to include in the newsletter. So I guess that's what 18 hours a week on email on average, call it 20, 15 on Instagram. So that's about 35 hours. And then, there's miscellaneous stuff that probably fills in the rest of like an additional 5 there. So I think it would be fairly easy to hire somebody to do just that. And the extra time that I spend comes from working with my advertiser or working with my advertising partners or working with my salesperson or thinking about strategy or thinking about money, all the things that you would like normal, probably would call like CEO stuff. That all takes up extra time because I have to do both. But I'm looking forward to the day when I don't have to do the writing or the Instagram anymore.
So I think that leads nicely into this next section that I want to talk about, which is your vision for your company. Your Twitter profile says you're building a hyper-local newsletter empire. What's your long-term plan?
I want to have 100 of these things in 100 different cities around the country. There's 310 cities that have more than 100,000 people in them in the US. And I think there's probably a bunch more that have in the 80s and 90s that could definitely sustain something like this as well. So the opportunities out there, there's a ton of open space. I think that first, I just want everybody to have something like this because I've seen people who just absolutely love it. It's getting to a point now, and this is really cool, where I can't go downtown in Annapolis anymore without getting recognized. I get stopped every time. I think I'm on like a month and a half streak, so I don't really see it ending anytime soon. It just is. It's getting to that point, and so that's really awesome. But like sometimes I meet people, and I can just see how much they love this thing. Like it makes their day to meet me, and I'm like, whoa, like these people love what I'm producing, and so I want this everywhere. I met somebody the other day. He didn't know it was me. He didn't recognize me, but then he was sitting at a business owned by a friend of mine. The business owner was like, "Hey, do you know Ryan? Do you know this thing, the Naptown Scoop?" And the guy goes, "You're Ryan!" Like it literally made his day. And then another time, this is also recently, this lady stopped her car in the middle of the street and was like, "Oh my gosh, you're Ryan. Can I take a picture of you?" And I'm like, there's this massive line of cars behind her because this is like a weekend in touristy downtown Annapolis. And I think they just figured someone was walking across the crosswalk because no one like honked at her. But she just stopped her car to take a picture of me. And she's like, "I gotta send this to all my friends. I'm so excited." And so like just seeing how much people love the product. I know that's not people loving me. Like that's people loving the product and I'm the one who produces it. So that's just how that gets shown. That's how that love gets expressed. And so I take that, read between the lines and say, okay, they love this product. Other people will love this product too. And I think it should go everywhere.
That's really cool. That's got to make you feel so good about what you're doing.
Oh yeah, that's the coolest feeling ever. It's it's like it's a little dopamine hit every time it happens, and it hasn't gotten old yet. I know it's a new thing, but I hope it never does. It is so cool.
So in order for that to scale, there needs to be a Ryan Sneddon in every city where this is happening, right? Like you can't be that person everywhere. So in order to grow this empire, does it make more sense, or are you more interested in acquiring existing publications who probably already have that value, or kind of going out, hiring people, training them, and growing your own newsletters in these different cities?
I think early on, I'd probably want to start them from scratch because that's the only way to guarantee, right? Full control. You make sure it's your brand from the start. Because I do like the brand. I like it's called the Naptown Scoop. I like how I could go into another city and call it the Baltimore Scoop. Um, it's that's the idea. It's not to build a new brand identity in every city. Um, so if I'm going to go buy people, or buy people's, that sounds terrible. If I'm going to go acquire other publications, you know, no matter if that means 50,000 or 500 people, we'll call them all publications. I'm going to go change the name. I'm going to go change things. And it's like getting like a skin graft or some kind of like organ transplant. There's a risk of it not taking. And I think in the beginning days, you really want to give yourself the best chance of success. And there's a risk of you going and just falling on your face, starting your own brand too. But I think you have a better chance of getting people who don't read anything like this to sign up with your brand. And then later down the line, when you have a little bit more tolerance for failure, you have a little bit more money coming into the company, you're doing a little bit better, then you can go and say, okay, we're going to go buy someone and we're going to go try this out and we're going to try and turn their brand into ours and see how that goes. So I think in the beginning, definitely like doing it from scratch. I don't want risk of the organ transplant failing.
What makes this a good business from the financial perspective?
It's super low cost. You don't have you have very minimal staff. You have, I mean, my costs are 80. I think you might have even been asking about this in a tweet once. Maybe it was somebody else because I was talking about how much I was spending on it, and someone was like, "What is?" I would love to see a breakdown of that, and I was like, "It's 80% advertising. It's almost all growing the newsletter. I could turn that off, and this would actually be like a decent moneymaker already." Um, so you have not only do you have low costs, but you have controllable costs. Like you can stop advertising, you can stop growing. Once you're hiring people, you can't stop paying them. That's not good. You can't do that. But you need probably two people to do this really well, and you could get away with one. Um, Compare that to a newspaper where you need 30 people to cover a town of 40,000 people, and you start to see maybe a little bit more why the economics of that don't make sense. How much money can you make out of a town of 40,000 people? Probably not enough to sustain 30 employees profitably, but definitely enough to sustain two. So I think that's what I like about it. It's very low cost. It's very lean.
The idea that once you hit or get close to market saturation, you can turn off your biggest cost, that's super appealing. That's it's encouraging for the future of your business for sure. So I just
Yeah, because you get
listened.
to that point, you turn it off, and then you just have enough to you just maintain your churn.
So less on the business side and more on the fun side. What's your favorite experience that was a direct result of writing the Naptown Scoop?
It'd be really hard to pick a favorite, but um, there's so many cool ones. I mean, I don't know if anyone else cares about this. I got to hold a baby emu.
I saw that
That was
picture.
yeah, that was just wild. That bird's gonna grow up to be bigger than me. It could easily kill me, but I got to hold it when it was like 8 inches tall, and it was unbelievably strong for being 8 inches tall. I was like squeezing it so hard I thought I was gonna crush it, but I was like just trying to keep it in my hand. Its legs were so strong. The bird was wild. The bird was actually wild. Um, but yeah, a favorite thing. I feel like it's probably just whatever happened last is what I always say. So over this last weekend, I partnered up with this music festival to do their marketing. It was the first year they'd ever done it, and they really needed some help. I think I joined the team 6 weeks before the festival. They had 300 tickets sold, so like they really needed help. Uh, they just, I think they had the classic startup problem where they like spend all their money on product and very little to any on distribution. So I was not able to convince them to really spend a lot on marketing, but I was able to convince them to spend a little bit, and we were able to get 2,500 people to this festival. And remember, there were 300 when I first started, so we definitely made some progress. And the headliners were Smash Mouth, Sugar Ray, and the Gin Blossoms. And the lead singer of Smash Mouth got sick, and so he didn't perform. And halfway through the Smash Mouth set, the lead singer of the Gin Blossoms came out to help. Uh, I don't know if someone asked him to or if he just thought he would, but like this guy came out and is literally reading lyrics off his phone, helping his buddies perform. Because all three of those bands, they've been playing together forever. They're really good friends, and they were so excited to be playing together. And so he's coming out helping his friends sing because their lead singer's not there, and that was really cool. And then they obviously close out the set with All Star because how could you close with anything else if you're Smash Mouth? And halfway through All Star, the lead singer of Sugar Ray, Mark McGrath, comes out, and they're all three on the stage together, and everybody in the crowd is like jumping up and down, screaming the lyrics to Smash Mouth All Star, and I'm not even looking at the stage. I'm just looking at the people, and like thinking, I got these people here. Like I had a part of this, and that has probably been the coolest moment so far. I'm literally standing there in the pit looking at this thing, crying. That it was just so cool to see all these people having a good time at something that you had a part in creating.
That's awesome. I love that. You had a tweet from a few months ago, and it's a picture of you and another guy eating cheeseburgers. And the tweet says, when road tripping to a wedding, taking a 1 hour detour to make Twitter friends, real friends, is always worth it. Can you tell me about this experience?
Yeah, that's Bryant. He lives I think he's in Greenville, North Carolina, in Greensboro. So similar names, but I think they're decently far from each other. I don't. I should be better on my North Carolina geography. I lived in South Carolina for a while. But yeah, I was going down to one of my best friend's weddings, and I looked at my route. And I was like, I think Bryant lives kind of close to here, and I just think that Twitter is the best networking place on the planet. I mean, I talked about going out and maybe getting some investors for the company. If I do that, I think definitely in the early days, a lot of them will probably come from Twitter. I mean, I've gotten to make some incredible friends on Twitter that I shouldn't be friends with. Like I shouldn't get to have the founder of Bleacher Report's phone number, but I do because of Twitter. And like I could text him and he'd answer. We talk on the phone sometimes. I shouldn't get to talk to these people, but I get to. So yeah, you got to be very, and this is less about the visit with Brian and more about how to make friends on Twitter. But you got to be very specific about what you talk about and the circle that you run in on Twitter, because Twitter can get into be just a nightmare. Like there's a lot of political garbage on there. I have a theory about life. If you want to find miserable people, just go to the comment section of any politician's post, and you will find people who you're like, man, how do you even find the motivation to get out of bed in the morning? Like you just look like life is terrible. So there's a lot of, you can easily get sucked into that on Twitter, but if you block words and you mute accounts and you only follow the right people, you can turn it into the best networking experience on the planet because it's global. I've got friends that I met them when they lived in Switzerland. Now they live in England, but we talk regularly about what we're doing in business. And like I said, I just shouldn't be friends with these people, but I get to be. So yeah, I would encourage anybody who's trying to build anything to only talk about that or adjacent things on Twitter, and get involved in other people's conversations too. Don't make it just a you talk about your thing. Get involved and learn about other people and interact with them. And uh, the classic Twitter phrase is the magic happens in the DMs. This is 2021. Like we are past the point of meeting people on the internet is weird. If you find somebody inspiring on Twitter, And somebody with like 100,000 followers or 500,000 followers probably not going to answer you. But like, there's really cool people out there with 500 followers or 15 followers. Just slide into the DMs and say, hey, like, I really love what you're doing. And you don't like ask to pick their brain, but like, you have to add some kind of value, but just ask to talk on the phone. And that's what I did with, well, I think Brian actually did that with me. And then we talked on the phone a couple times, and then I was like, hey, I'm coming down, let's hang out. And so stopped and had lunch. We talk on the phone fairly regularly. So yeah, we're past the point of meeting people on the internet is weird. If you're not down with that, then you're gonna get behind.
I love that. All that advice is fantastic. I'm working on an article about like how to make friends on Twitter because I think it would benefit so many people because like you said, it's global, right? It just like opens doors to people who have the exact same interests as you and who are either a little bit further in their journey or a little bit behind you. And these relationships that you can make online are so beneficial. Like I got my last job through Twitter, right? And like you have the founder of Bleacher Report's phone number and you can talk to him. Like what a great resource. So yeah, I'm working on this article and I'm going to incorporate a lot of the stuff that you just said in that.
Yeah, Twitter is everything LinkedIn wants to be, I think.
Yeah, I agree. All right. I'd love to finish our conversation by asking you some rapid fire questions. Sound good?
I love rapid fire questions.
All right. What advice would you give to a smart driven college student about to graduate?
If you want to start a company, you should not go get a job.
What is a favorite mental model you use in your life?
Oh gosh, I don't really think about mental models at all. Uh, I feel like that's such a buzzword. I don't even know what they really mean. One thing that I try and live my life through is, I guess you would call this a mental model. I don't know. I tried to get a couple of years ago. I started trying to get better at realizing when something was special in the moment rather than thinking it was later. So I try to realize this is special, not think later that was special. And that just really helps me to be more present in moments like that Smash Mouth moment. I was sitting, and now I've gotten to a point where I'm good at it, and I'm in that moment, and I'm like, you're gonna remember this probably for the rest of your life. You like, and you can increase your own enjoyment by realizing how special something is in the moment. That sounds kind of like wishy-washy nonsense, but like if you it really does matter. Like if you knew that today was your last day on earth, like you would know that, you would live it better. If you realize that something special or important in the moment, you will live it better. So I guess I don't know if you call that a mental model, but that's the way that I try and live my life.
Yeah, I think that's exactly a mental model. That's a great one. Who is your favorite Twitter follow?
Oh, that's tough. I haven't really been on there. I haven't spent much time on there recently. Um, oh no, I have an easy answer. Any of his accounts, I don't even know if he's banned yet, but any of the John W.B. Rich accounts, they're just a parody troll account, but I think it's so funny.
All right, I'm going to check those out. What book are you currently reading?
I'm reading a book about a lighthouse in Annapolis that one of my readers wrote.
Oh, that's so cool. See, I love connections like that. You would probably have never heard of that book if you didn't write this email.
No, and this guy's been a big supporter of what he was. He's like a really cool. I don't want to call him an old guy, but the guy's probably like in his. I think he's probably in his 40s, maybe 50s, but I don't know. He looks really young, but he has like old kids, not old kids, but like college age kids. But he's just really cool. Like he started the company. He works in tech now. He's like an early adopter. He's got a Tesla. He probably had a Tesla a long time ago or wanted one. Like he's just a very cool in the know old person, and not older person. And he was like a super early adopter. I don't know how he found out about the Naptown scoop, but he was like super early, and he was like, "Hey, let's get lunch." So like he's been a very good friend, and he wrote this book, and I helped to promote it, and then he gave me a copy. So yeah, he actually gave me this copy like several months ago. I just never opened it. So now I'm actually reading it because we're going out of his boat on next Wednesday, and I want to make sure I have it done by then.
What's the name of the book?
Thomas Point Shoal Lighthouse, Chesapeake Bay icon.
All right, cool. I'll put that in the show notes. All right, last up. This is one that I steal from Patrick O'Shaughnessy. What is the kindest thing anyone has ever done for you?
Well, my parents have let me live in this house for the last year while I built this business. So that's cool. I mean, it's got to be parents, right? I think parents, you could just talk about like having me and paying for my life for the first 18 years of it. And I was really fortunate they were able to pay for my college. I think parents are like the easy answer here, just because if you've got them and they're great, they're great, and you just can't replace that. But if we go outside of parents, because I think that's too much of an easy answer, let's think of something harder. I know people have, but this is not me like trying to think through a really rough life. I'm just trying to think of the best one. I don't know if I'd say this is the nicest thing anyone's ever done for me, but it stands out because of the time of my life, and I still don't know who did it. Um, I crashed my car junior year of college, sophomore and junior year, don't remember which. But I crashed into my one of my best friend's cars. Uh, it was my fault because I rear-ended him, but like it also wasn't because one of our other friends went down the wrong way on this road, and I was looking to make sure, see if they were going to go or I was going to go, and my the friend who I hit had started to go, but then stopped. And by the time he started to go, and so I looked the other way, and then he stopped, and I was still looking the other way. So I hit him, and I totally wrecked my car, barely damaged his. He had a giant 4Runner, and I had a tiny sedan, so my car was toast. And I was trying to do whatever jobs I could to make money to buy a new car. Um, and one day I just come home to my house and there's this envelope on my, like, hidden under my mat. And I forget how much money it had in it. I think it was like $57 or like some random number where I could pretty clearly tell that like somebody just gave me all the cash they had. And I think I think they wrote Psalm 132 on the envelope. I don't know if you're a Bible reader, but I don't even remember what that says. They didn't sign it. I have no idea who did it. I think I know who did it, but they strongly deny that they did. But they have very distinct and terrible handwriting, and so I'm pretty sure it's theirs. But yeah, that was just like I never expected that. I didn't ask for that. It just happened, and the money was like all crumbled up, and it was a weird number. Like someone just did that. They just probably were driving by my house and like didn't see my car in the driveway and thought to do that. And I don't know why. I don't know for sure who it was, but that was just incredible.
That's cool. I like that. Ryan, thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been a lot of fun. I feel like I've learned a ton about local newsletters. Where can people find you if they want to continue the conversation or subscribe to the Naptown Scoop?
Well, Naptown Scoop's at naptownscoop.com. And then I'm on Twitter at Sneddon, and but also if you go on Naptown Scoop Instagram, which is also just Naptown Scoop, and follow that because it's a whole lot of fun. Even if you don't live in Annapolis, when you DM me there, I'll always answer. That's part of my promise as the brand.
Good stuff. Thanks, man. I can't wait to see how the newsletter grows and how the empire grows.
Yeah, thanks for having me on here.